Today I'm going to tell you the tale of two men. Two men that started off exactly the same and ended completely different. So I'm going to read to you from an article that the one is in the Edinburgh Herald, and the other one is, I think it's a Telegraph, the London Telegraph, about these two guys. And I'm going to start off with Eric Liddell. Can you just put the next slide on for me? So, Eric Liddell was born, just go back there for me, please, in 1902, but that was not the important thing. The important thing is Eric Liddell died on the age of 43 years old. And he was young, still young. Go over to the next one, please. So he was a Scottish athlete, and he was a Scottish rugby player, and then he won the gold in the 400 meters at the 1924 Olympic Games, and he set a world record as well. So the last one. Right. I just want to go and stand still and I'm going to read about him in this article. So the article is written by a complete atheist and a cynic. And you will hear, as I read it, you can see that this is a cynic. But he is writing this about Eric Liddell nearly 120 years after he was born. And he says, "Your icon this week was a sprinter, a rugby player, and a Christian missionary. 3 activities your correspondent believes should be banned." 3 activities: rugby, sprinter, and Christianity. "Therefore, rendering me perfectly placed to provide a balanced and respectful portrait. Actually, after researching the life, I found Eric Liddell, the Flying Scotsman, admirable, if only he devoted himself to journalism or something equally worthwhile." Then he said, "You'll know him from the film Chariots of Fire. You remember your man refused to run on a Sunday and so forth. But there was more to him than that. Eric Liddell was born in 1902. He was born to 2 missionary parents in China. And then when he was in primary school, he was sent to Luton or to England at Eltham School. And the headmaster described him. He said, "Eric Liddell was named the best athlete of his year and became captain of the cricket and rugby union teams. His headmaster described him as entirely without vanity." What an incredible testimony. Entirely without vanity. In 1920, he went to the Edinburgh University to study pure science. And then he played Scottish rugby, and he also ran for Scotland. In 1924, in that year's Paris Olympics, a devout Christian withdrew from the 100 meters, his strong point, because the heats were taking place on the Sabbath, on the Sunday. The decision caused heat in the press, which questioned his patriotism. Liddell poo-pooed all that and focused instead on the 400 meter held on a weekday. Ostensibly, his chances were slim, despite being cheered by the pipe band of the 51st Highland Brigade playing outside the stadium beforehand. 2 of the runners had already set world records, and in addition, Eric was assigned the worst lane on the outside. However, he set such a blistering pace from the off that the 2 others stumbled trying to keep up. He broke all records with a time of 47.6 seconds. The press praised him for his patriotism. In the aforementioned film, Chariots of Fire, he said, "God made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure." In reality, he said, "Each one of us is in a greater race than I have run in Paris. And this race ends when God gives out the medals. an incentive to waddle slowly, you'd think. Incredible, the cynicism that comes through here. But this was Eric Liddell. So he refused to run on a Sunday. He ran the 400-meter, which was not his best race. He broke a world record. And then he gave all the glory to God. And then I'm going to go over to the other guy that we call Jonathan Edwards. So Jonathan Edwards, if you just go on to the next slide. Jonathan Edwards was also a British athlete, and he broke the world record in triple jump. His father was also a reverend. He came out of a parish. He came out of a Christian home. And then his Christianity was very, very important to him as well. So they say about him, he was an Olympic and world champion and the first man to jump more than 60 feet. But ask people for one thing they know about Jonathan Edwards, and the answer would likely be his Christian faith. It was a cornerstone of life for the triple jumper, even costing him a place at the 1991 World Championship after he refused to compete on a Sunday. At the World Championships in Gothenburg in 1995, he set the world record for 18.29 meters, which made him the first man to jump more than 60 feet. That same year, he won BBC Sports Personality of the Year, and the climax of his career was a gold at the Sydney Olympics in 2000 as Great Britain's most successful medal-winning athlete. In 2001, he has made a CBE, and then retiring in 2003, became a regular face presenting sport on the BBC. Just go on to the next slide. So, exactly the same story. Come out of a Christian home. In 1991, he refused to jump on a Sunday. So he could have received a world or a medal. He was a favorite to receive a medal at that Games, World Championship. So he went to his dad and he said to his dad, "What now?" And his dad said to him, "Listen, Jonathan, God gave you a talent and he gave you a platform. And I feel that you must use this talent and a platform to go and spread the kingdom," which he did. And earnestly, I know one of the testimonies that he got was every time that he jumped, he had a little tin of sardines in his bag. And he said to himself, that reminded him that he is a fisher of men. And that's that's his first calling, not athletics. Right. So now, both of them stop athletics. So what did Eric Liddell do? So Eric Liddell returned to northern China. He married Florence Mackenzie, whose Canadian parents were missionaries. The couple had 3 daughters, the last of whom Liddell would not live to see. So, in 1941, in the face of Japanese aggression, the British government advised these nationals to leave Florence, and your children departed for Canada, while Liddell took a tough gig at a rural mission hospital in Zhouzhang, where his doctor brother Rob was suffering from exhaustion. He was interned in a squalid, rat-filled camp in Huaishan when the Japanese took over the camp. There was no running water, meals, a small bowl of soup with bread. So he chose to go back to China to become a missionary. And he did incredible work there. And when the Japanese invaded China, his wife and his 3 daughters went back to Canada, but he decided to stay behind because he saw that there was a need, and he went out and helped his brother Rob, who was a doctor at one of the camps. Right, so Eric became a leader at the camp, and he avoided factions but organized games, helped the elderly, taught Bible classes and science to the children, who called him Uncle Eric. Camp survivors recalled Liddell's charming Scottish brogue, his sense of humor, and the help afforded others who might not otherwise have survived One described him as the finest Christian gentleman it has been my pleasure to meet. Another said he was as close to a saint as anyone I've ever known. After initially refusing, he even refereed the children's sports match on a Sunday to stop the children fighting in his absence. Alas, he was soon fighting for his life. On top of overwork and malnutrition, Riddle developed a brain tumor. He died aged 43. The entire camp was grief-stricken. This is a life of Eric Liddell. The same story. Now I'm going to read to you of Jonathan Edwards. But then, 16 years later, he simply lost his faith. It was seemingly out of the blue, and what prompted it still appears to be a mystery. I just stopped believing in God, and I don't think it was anything more complicated than that, he says, by way of explanation. His religious crisis saw Jonathan, 47, the son of a Devon vicar, quit his role as a presenter on BBC Songs of Praise in 2007. I was always very vocal about it when I was competing that I was a Christian. It would be a bit weird to talk about it when I wasn't, he says. I don't go to church anymore, not at all. The decision also sparked rumors that his relationship with his wife, Alison herself, the daughter of an evangelist, was under strain. Jonathan says the couple are happy together, though he admits it has created a fundamental change at the heart of their family. They have two sons, Sam, 20, and Nathan, 18. Alison is still very involved with church, and she actually works in a church, he says, but neither of our boys go to church. They made their own decisions. It's all fine with me. So BBC had an interview with him, and they say, Jonathan does not have the air of a man in crisis. I'm happy, he says, and actually I'm fine. I don't miss my faith. In many ways, I feel more settled and happier in myself without it. I don't know if that is related to losing my faith or would have been the case anyway, but it's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. 7 years on, and I don't feel a gap in my life, and I suppose that's the proof of the pudding, isn't it? So what does he do? Eric Liddell, we know, died in the camp. So what does he do now? He says, Jonathan is passionate about his job. So he's a commentator. And hard work has given him a lovely 6-bedroom house in Goswick, an affluent suburb of Newcastle. But his work often keeps them apart, he says, from him and his wife. I didn't do anything the past 6 years apart from playing golf after I retired, and then I thought, this isn't good enough. So I got into road cycling and fell in love with it. I can go out of 3 to 4 hours a day quite happily. So I want to end off with the name of the article, because that's like an epitaph of your one day when you go and look at your gravestone. So what this atheist said of Eric Liddell was a hero who ran like hell for the greater glory of God. This is how he is remembered. This is the name of the article honoring him. The name of the article for Jonathan Edwards is Jonathan Edwards, I've taken a leap of faith and stopped believing in God. Why does this happen? I mean, why does this happen? What's the hard story that I've read to you today? What's the thing that really, really touched you here, that's so hard for you? I want to ask you, what in this article? Why would a man that has done all this and acknowledged God like that, and it's not that God was not important for him. He was so important to him that he gave a medal away. Why would he suddenly go into a faith crisis? That's the one thing that I want to know. And that's a hard sore thing about the story, because both of them had exactly the same background. Both of them married a wife that was a missionary's daughters as well. everything is the same. They both studied science as well. But it turned out differently. That's the one thing. But the second thing, and the more disturbing thing for me on this article about Jonathan Edwards, was that it says, neither of our boys go to church. They made their own decision. It's all fine. You instruct the shepherd, you scatter the sheep. Two so important things that come through here. The one is the depth of faith of the other one versus, and then the second thing is, if you go after the dad and the dad fall, the children is in trouble. The house is in trouble. And we can spend a whole sermon on that and the importance of a man in a house. So this is the two stories that I've read to you now. So why, I want to ask you again, why do you think a guy, 16 years down the line after quitting, running on a world championship, why will you stop believing? Why will you go into a faith crisis? Why do you think? Why do you think it will happen? What do you think was the difference between these two? Ego. So that he doesn't need God. Right, so religion on the one side. That he built his belief system on religion, and the other thing on his own strength. Those definitely two very, very important things that we can go and look at. Anything more? Yeah.
Stop going to church, so I didn't have discipleship.
It can be, but his wife, his wife, I mean afterwards, he stopped afterwards, yeah?
He loved the world.
He loved this world. Can be. Yeah.
I think after he stopped athletics, he forgot to take his sardine can.
Right, so we're going to go on. This is part 2 of my series. The first part was, remember, Francesconi and Panata, when we talked about finishing the race. So we're going to go to 2 Timothy 4. It says, I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, I've kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid upon for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing. All of us want to finish life, finish this race. We don't want to go there in the straight and fall out. And this is our aim as Christians, is to finish that race. But what are the things that's going to determine in future that if we're going to go and finish that race? So I went into the research and literature and saw, why does the people leave the faith? There's another guy that came out, Joshua Harris. He's a pastor and he had an influential man. Wrote a book on Ike's Dating Goodbye, which was an excellent book. Came out a few years back and said, no, I don't believe anymore, and I'm sorry about all the things that I've written in the book. So, what does the research say? The research says there's pressure from society. There's a dilution of our Christian values. They say, the people say, we want authenticity. We want relationship. We want discipleship. We want the presence of God. We don't see that the primary concern in the churches anymore. And I'm talking now about America. And they say, what we see is, we don't see churches that take us back to the first love and fostering that deep-seated love and relationship with God. But we see churches ticking off religious activities, going to religious routine. We are disillusioned and we are disheartened. Now, it's easy to go and say it's a church's problem, because it's not so easy. There's a problem within yourself as well sometimes when you go out there. But this is what the literatures say. And this is why the people say, that's why I'm turned my back on the church. I'm disillusioned because I can't get these important things. I don't see it. So I want to just tell you a story about Max Lucado. He wrote a story in the 6 hours on a Friday. He had a boat, one of these water boats, water homes. And it was a dilapidated water home, and him and a few of his friends stayed on that boat. And there was a hurricane warning that came through and said the hurricane is going to strike that area. So what he then did is, him and his friends knew that this boat will not be able to withstand the storm. So they got the ropes and they tied that boat to every one of the trees that they could. And a wise old sailor came past him and he said to them, guys, you can't do that. The hurricane will come and he will uproot the trees and he will just pull your attached water home to shreds. What you need to do is you need to deep anchor that boat at 4 different levels. And then you must just pray that you get through this storm. And he said to them, to deep anchor this boat, it's not going to change the severity of the storm. But it's going to help you to go through the storm and make it to the other side. And said to them, there's 3 things that's important. Is deep anchor. That's the one thing. Pray is the second thing. And hold on is the third thing. That's what you do when you go through a crisis. And the church is in crisis with people leaving the church. So I want to give you 4 anchors today, for you and for the church, which is very important for us to go and address this issue. So the first one is, I'm going to read the parable to you. Build your house on the rock, Matthew 7. As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and put them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundations on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete. It is when the storm comes. The moment when the torrent struck, it's not if. The storm is going to come. So my first anchor, what I want to talk about is the anchor of belief. So Jesus asked his disciples, who do the people say I am? And they say, some of them say you're John the Baptist. Some of them say that you're Elijah. Some of them say that you're a prophet. And he turns to them and say, who do you think I am? What do you say? Who am I? And then we know Peter said to him, you are Jesus, the Son of the living God. You are the Messiah. And he said to him, flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you. My Father in heaven revealed that to you. So I want to ask you today, what are you believing? Because what he said there, that is the cornerstone of the church. And that is the cornerstone of the house that you're going to build. That cornerstone is, what is your revelation about Jesus? Why do you believe? And I'm asking this today for you because you can't build your revelation on your father's and mother's revelation. When the storm comes, you will fall down. Are you a believer because it's expected from you? It's expected from your family because you're scared to go to the hell one day? What is driving you to be a believer? What is your revelation about Jesus? Because if you cannot say your revelation, and your revelation don't come out of a conviction from a living relationship, you're in trouble. Because this is what happened to Jonathan. God was important, but he didn't have a revelation of him. And that's why it's so important. Today I want to ask you, if you have knowledge about God, take that journey from year to year. Take that journey from knowledge to relationship. Because there's a lot of us that look at the Bible and it's just an intellectual religion. You need to go and cover the distance. You need to go and make him your own. If you're in doubt, there's a lot of people that I walk outside and Christians and they're in doubt. It's not wrong to be in doubt, but what are you doing with your doubt? You can't just stay in doubt for the rest of your life who Jesus is and your revelation about him. You have to go and sit and say to yourself, what is Jesus to me? Why am I sitting here today? Our religion is an all or nothing religion. There's a no in-between religion. It's not a religion where you can stand in the world and then can stand in the house. Jesus said to himself, a house that's divided will fall. It's an all or nothing principle. There's no place for doubt. You have to go and sort out your doubt. Go and get help. Go and talk to people. There's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge. But do something for that. So, C.S. Lewis wrote in Mere Christianity, I'm trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. This is the one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level of the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool. You can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet. Give my big water. And call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. Either he's the Son of God or he's not. And you need to go and sit at your house today and ask yourself, do I believe in the Son of God? And if you're not, then you have to go and start spending time with God and start getting the revelation which Peter got from the Father, that God will show you the revelation of Jesus. Because if that cornerstone is not that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah, if the storm comes, your house is going to fall down. And it must be a wholehearted belief in you. So that is the first thing, the first anchor. So, when you get home today, I would love you to sit around the table and ask each other, why do I believe? Why do I believe? Why do I believe Jesus? Why do I believe that he is the Son of God? Is it out of a relationship, or do I have any doubts? And you have to sort that out. You have to. You can't go on with doubt in a mindset of doubt. So that's one thing. The second thing is that we saw is the anchor of the church. So before Jesus went up to heaven, he said, all authority on earth and under heaven has been given to me. Therefore go out into the world. And the other thing that he said, so that's just before he went up to heaven. But just before his death, he said to the disciples, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. That was the two commands that he gave us. One before his death, one before he went up to heaven. So that is really important. And if you go and look at that, you will see that's the essential of Jesus. Love, go out, care, and teach. This is who Jesus was. So, when we get into a situation like that, where we go out in love and where we reach out to the lost, we will experience Jesus. And we will not find him as somebody that's indifferent. So the gospel is not only based on an invitation, come and see, but it's also based on a mandate that says, go and tell. If we become a church where we go and put the emphasis on people coming into the church, more than equipping the saints to go out into their daily living, we will create a church full of spectators and not disciples. And when you're a spectator, you will become critical in your spirit. And when you are critical in your spirit, when you just sit and receive and be a spectator, you will then start, when you're critical, you will start experiencing, wat is die Engelse woord wat jy sê as mense iets offense? Then you will take offense. You will start looking and seeing offense. And then you are prone for a faith crisis. So what do they say then? What do they say? The second reason is, if you go and do the two things that Jesus said, go out into the world and go and give love, you will see people's lives changed. You will see communities transformed, and you will see churches revitalized. When we go out there, we will experience Jesus. We will experience him in the love, and we will experience him in serving. So that second anchor is an anchor to love and to go out, and not to become spectators, because they show the research show that those people that go out and love, they have a very small percentage of them will eventually go into a faith crisis. The third one is the anchor of relevance. We are sitting now with a generation that comes through, they say Generation Z. They are from the late 90s. And this generation is the first fully digital generation. They are online generation. In Asia, the children spend up to 6 hours a day on their cell phones. So now, this generation, they are passionate, they are creative, and they stand for what they believe. So if you go and look at them and you have to distinguish them, they are inclusive. They say we don't differentiate between gender, sexual orientation, and race. They are independent. They will not ask you for any information or something that they're struggling with. They will go to the internet. And authenticity is for them very, very important. So if we go and look now and we see, okay, in this generation, 70% of the children that comes out of a Christian home, when they leave at 18 years of age, will leave the Christian faith behind. Only 35% will come back. So this is a generation that we're sitting now with. So they ask him, why? Why do you just turn your back on faith? You know, the three things that they said, faith is boring. Christianity is boring. I can tell you now, a young youth that say Christianity is boring has never gone out on an outreach. Because this is what they say. When you go out there, that's when you experience God. And then you can't stand indifferent anymore. And we will have to get the youth to go out on outreaches. That's one thing. The second thing is they say the church sidestep difficult questions. And they give soft answers. And and then that was the second thing. The third thing that they said is that they want authenticity. And we, unfortunately, we are a church where you get people that's the one way on a Sunday, and the rest of the week they're different. And that's the things that made them to turn their backs onto Christianity. And they say the questions, they say you don't answer our questions. Our questions are, why are science and faith at war with one another? Why don't we see miracles anymore? Why don't our prayers get answered? Why does God allow so much suffering? Why do the church ostracize LGBTQ? Difficult questions. We as a church need to establish a platform where we can discuss it informally and with teaching. We cannot ignore this generation because there's a 70% fallout. They want answers. They want why. We baby boomers, we didn't ask why. They ask why. And we have to be relevant for that. And then lastly, the anchor of science. So the atheists believe, they believe that the universe was formed randomly. They believe that there's no life after death. And they believe that science will explain all, eventually, ultimately, everything. And it's not happening. None of these three things that I say to you now can be proven. But what they do is they say science and Christianity are two opposites. You can either believe in science, and this is what they tell our children, be intellectual, believe in science, and instead of being non-intellectual, and be a Christian. And that's utter nonsense. Because when we go and look at science, we see science is an extension of God. It's an extension of His miracle working powers. Then when you look at science, it points towards a designer and a design. And behind that design sits a designer God versus a random formation that the atheist says. So we need to go and sit with the children. And we need to go and tell them, this is nonsense. There's not this thing that intellectual versus non-intellectual. Science versus Christianity. Science is an extension of Christianity. Science point and prove Christianity. And we have to change our approach there, where we can't just go for children and tell them, listen, you can't believe it because I say. You can't believe evolution because it's from the devil. We have to go and say, this is what evolution say. This is what the Bible says. This is what I believe. And this is how you have to talk to the generation coming through. That last slide, can you just show that to me, please? So the last slide that I want to say to you, in April 8, 1966 on Time, it said, is God dead? And Eric Metaxas has written a book now, Is Atheism Dead? It's a brilliant book. It's a book that helps the kids especially to understand science and God. I would like to ask you, if you got young children, that you work through this book with them, that they can understand the concept. It's not science versus God. So if we go and look and see, these are the 4 things that's currently causing Christians to turn their back on God. It's 4 anchors, 4 important anchors. There's more, but there's 4 important anchors. And may we as a church look at this and start implementing it in our church and start addressing the needs that they say that's out there, and just not turn it away and ignore it. So that we can then get Christians that will run this race where you can say one day, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. It's not a sudden thing, It's a long-standing thing. If there's a problem that you've got on this, if you're in doubt, please come and talk to us. Listen to last week's sermon by Ian, a brilliant service on the deity of Christ. And that we be open, first of all, that we be open to the revelation of Jesus in our lives, to go out and to give love, to be a relevant church, and lastly, to be a church that supports science and teach our children the correct ways and not just say to them, this is from the devil. Can I just pray? Thank you, Lord, that we can come to you today. Thank you that you are the foundation of our houses, Lord, and that you will come to every one of us, and that you will give us a revelation of who you are, Lord. A deep-seated revelation, that we will know you, that we will experience you, and that we will see you, Lord. And that on that foundation, on that cornerstone, Lord, that we will build our faith life in future. I ask in your name alone. Amen.